Good evening, everybody. This is Cinnamon Noir.
And this is the Ramen Shaman.
Welcome to Fez.
As you wanted to wait for the actual game to come on.
Yeah, pretty much. It's interesting that they have the autosave thing come up before the title screen, but So, Fez probably needs no introduction, as the game is more than half a decade old and one of the most famous indie games of all time. In fact, I'm pretty sure that Indie Game, the documentary, or whatever it's called, heavily emphasized the development of Fez, am I right? Anyway.
I never watched it, so I wouldn't know.
Neither have I, that's why I'm confused. Anyway, Fez, as you can see from the title screen, is a rather interesting geometrical theme, which we'll get into more later. I also like how the save menu is literally Star Wars. They've gone to plaid.
I remember, I know I played, the very beginning of this game. I think I actually played it with you.
Yeah, I think that's possible. Anyway, this is our protagonist. Contrary to what might seem obvious, his name is not Fez. His name is Gomez. We played a number of games like that, like 𝘷𝘦𝘳𝘺 and Alwa's Awakening, more recently.
I think 𝘷𝘦𝘳𝘺 is a pretty cool guy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But you can't say doesn't afraid of anything, because everything in that game is scary.
Mm-hmm.
Anywho. So Fez is very simple mechanics. Basically, you run around with the arrow keys, you jump with space. You have an interact button, I should say. They actually get a lot of mileage out of the interact button, though, as we'll see. And there's one more mechanic that I won't spoil yet, because it's a major part of the game and it'll be coming up.
It is a pretty, effective reveal.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, I'm also showing off death mechanic in this game. This game has a very cleverly designed mechanic where if you fall too far, your character will sort of despawn and respawn back where they were, which is very nice because there's a lot of platforming in this game, and without that, you would lose a lot of progress very quickly. The way this works, if you fall off onto a lower platform, you're more likely to respawn where you were than to end up on a lower space. It's kind of nice. So anyway, we just got this message from the geezer who wants us to go up to the top of our village and talk to him. You can talk to people in this game with shift. Actually, one of the least utilized mechanics in this game. Because apart from this section, there's not a lot of people. These guys are talking about some interesting things. One of them says that his favorite shape is a square, and not a cube, because those don't exist. In fact,
I love village.
People in this game, some of them refer to cubes as devil squares, which is an interesting concept. The idea is that there's something unnatural about them. Or maybe more like supernatural, in the same sense that surreal is not unreal, but more like hyper-real. Basically, our character lives in Flatland. This little space is all he's known his entire life. Kind of weird they have no food, but this isn't an RPG, so I don't expect really in-depth world building.
I was going to say earlier, to be fair, if you'd never experienced a third dimension, the result would be kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, though maybe you wouldn't miss it, who knows. So this old geezer is kind of interesting. He is in fact wearing a fez, so, as the title mentions.
I like to think...
You like to think...
In some games, that would be like you from the future.
What makes you think it's not in this?
Nothing.
Yeah, I'm also pretty sure, in fact, that it is. We'll just go ahead and spoil that, since it may not even be a spoiler since we're making it up. But there's good reason to assume that he is, actually, as we'll see from his house. So, this is weird. We just ran into a deity that's a cube made of Tetris blocks.
Who's that Pokemon?
Or Tetrominoes, as they're also known.
It's missing now.
Yeah, you got me with that one.
That's an old...
Anyway, he speaks a weird language, which is in fact a decipherable code. Fez is sort of like a puzzle game where there's multiple levels of puzzle solving, and you can do as much as you like, or as little. Solving the code is one of the more complicated and, intellectually engaging aspects of it. Needless to say, we will not be doing that in this, because a lot of it's not even related to mechanically playing the game. You know, it's just working things out on a piece of paper. And also, I'm lazy.
Yeah.
We're just going to be seeing this game on a more superficial level. And if you want to get more in-depth in this game, I suggest you buy it, because it is an excellent game. One of very few widely hyped indie games that I actually kind of love.
Yeah.
Anyway,
No comment on
it
that.
appears the cube deity has bestowed some kind of boon upon us, which is the fez, the titular fez. I actually really like the fez as a concept because the tassel is the only thing that reminds you that it's three-dimensional. So it's kind of like the centerpiece of the game. You know, it looks like a square, but the little detail reminds you that it is in fact three-dimensional. So, this is the power that the cube thing has bestowed upon us, is that we can shift the world around, and what's happening? Oh my god. I think we went overboard with it.
I do think, in-game graphical glitches, they were kind of a clever concept when this game was introduced. They weren't really done.
Yeah, well,
In this day and age.
if you're sick of that, you're gonna hate this playthrough.
It's... Well...
Oh wow, short game.
I'm thinking particularly of one specific indie game,
Carol Blaster, yes I know.
No,
We've played it.
not that one. Visual novel indie game in
Oh,
particular that
yeah, I don't like visual.
I actually did think was quite a clever game, but some of the things were more boring creepypasta than genuinely clever.
Yeah.
Still not bad though.
Anywho, so we've started the game over because clearly we messed up last time. I think this time I'm gonna shift dimensions less. Oh wait.
You know, this actually didn't the second Paper Mario game do something like this?
Third, you're thinking of. Super Paper Mario for the Wii.
Super Paper
Yes, it is very similar. The graphical style is kind of similar, and so are some of the people. Except instead of shifting between strictly 2D planes in that game, you change the world from 2D to 3D, which is a little different. It didn't use it mechanically the way this game is. Anyway, here is our Navi. Naturally, going by the aesthetics of this game, it's a glowing cube of many colors. And he, I don't know, let's just go with it, tells you what you need to do. Cards on the table right at the bat. This game is a very simple story. It's more evocative than actually, like, interesting from a storytelling perspective, so we're not going to emphasize the story here. I'll just bring up little lore bits that I know, which is not much, as they become relevant.
Fair enough.
So, we are introduced to the central mechanic of the game now. Quick recap. On track. Stay the course. 1,000 points of light. Collect cubes. No. So, the central mechanic of this game is to collect these little cube bits and also whole cubes. There are 32 of them in the game. To properly finish the game, you need to collect all 32. Which is
32 bits, if you will.
Yeah, that is an interesting concept, although this game doesn't have much in common with the PlayStation. So one of the kids at the bottom says they saw a devil square, which to me means maybe that thing didn't just appear to us, but it appeared to everybody. Who knows? So this is kind of interesting. There's a chest in that other room, but how do we get there? So this is another mechanic of this game. When you are in front of a hole that shows the other side of it, you can basically do a full 180 flip and go to the other side. There are occasions when that will be required, because shifting dimensions in the normal way would not show you where you need to be. This game has a very interesting mechanical setup where it's almost like the way your eye sees it affects how it appears, how it is physically, even though in the real world that wouldn't work. So, if you don't see something on screen, it doesn't exist, if it's behind something, for instance. But on the other hand, if you see something that technically doesn't exist, it might still work, if you know what I mean. Sorry, you were saying something, I
I've
believe?
always found that, the idea of deliberately shifting world geometry based on current perspective to be a really fascinating concept.
Yeah, I don't
in video games.
think anyone does it better than this game, honestly. This game is one of the best I've ever seen in terms of taking a simple mechanic and just juicing it for all the juice it has. So this is a treasure map. Treasure maps in this game are interesting. Unlike a lot of other games, they don't just explicitly lead to a buried treasure that you dig up. Instead, they're basically hints that when they show you the level geometry of a certain screen and you recognize it, it'll then tell you, if you're able to interpret it, where something might be hidden. It's less X marks the spot and more, you know, just sort of like a riddle, I guess I could say. We won't be looking at them much. Honestly, you know, again, cards on the table. I cheated a lot in this playthrough because some of these puzzles are really tedious. So I looked at the treasure maps a little less often than you might if you wanted to play this game completely straight, but I do look at a few of them and explain how they work. So this is a little annoying. I don't actually know if the game is supposed to get this dark at any point. I think that might have been a glitch.
It seems intentional, but...
Yeah, so the geezer is definitely, if not a past version of us, he's a guy who did what we are now doing once. I also like how that thing looks like a chest from one angle, but from the other angle it looks like a camera. I mean, sorry, from the other angle it clearly is a camera. Which is relevant, because in this game, a lot of puzzles rely on you having an idea of what something looks like, so a camera would be very useful. This is one of the few games I can think of in the modern world where they sort of resemble the old-fashioned text adventures, where you do a lot of writing down clues and maybe making your own maps. You know, stuff people used to do a long time ago, back before games were made to be user-friendly.
Well, I think the other thing is, back in the... In today's day and age, you can have... You know, assuming you're a competent UI designer, you can have the game record any and all necessary information without too much trouble.
On a map, for instance.
On a map or in some kind of player journal, something like that. The idea that you could make players keep their own notes or make their own map as a way to avoid having to do it yourself. And having it eat up game memory.
Right.
Isn't really so much of a thing anymore. And it's... I'm not trying to make developers sound lazy. It's more like... I'm trying to say that it's interesting what they sometimes accomplished with constraints.
So anyway, we're noticing a few things about the mechanics here. One is that if you are on the opposite side of what you're facing and you go into an open area, Gomez will sort of creep into the foreground from where he is in the background. That's how you can avoid getting stuck. Oh, I love this thing, by the way. This is like a little cubist interpretation of evolution. You've seen the classic evolution diagram, right? Which was like a lizard evolving into a ape and then a guy. This is sort of a parody of that. I also like the two-dimensional view of someone's digestive system. Which looks a lot like the pictures in those medicine ads, where they just show like a glowing pill going into a long pink tube. This game's kind of got a silly sense of humor. Anywho, we've got almost all the cubes we need to leave now. I think I might have left one behind by accident. Oh no, it's at the bottom. So I'm heading there now. I would have thought that would have been a fall that killed me, but... You'll find out pretty soon that fall damage in this game is pretty severe. I would say you could fall maybe one of these stories without dying, but two would kill you.
Honestly, I feel like I kind of like it more in platformers when there just isn't fall damage.
Here's the thing, though. In this game, it's actually a benefit to you, like I said earlier, because otherwise you fall off of platforms all the time in this game, and if it didn't kill you and respawn you where you started from, then you would keep losing progress. So actually, it's really a lucky thing that the game kills you. That's one of the odd things about this game, but it's...
It would turn into getting over it.
Exactly. Whereas, unlike getting over it, this game is actually fun.
Yeah. I don't know. I've heard of people who actually who actually enjoyed getting over it, or at least like managed to find it satisfying.
Uh-huh. Well, there's no need to take those people down here. You know, it's not what I'm about. That's what my other channel is for. Actually, no, this is going up on my channel, so whatever. I also like how Gomez opened the door there at the same time as he collapsed. I like to do weird things with this sometimes. I don't know if you noticed, but when I got all the cubes and it also activated the little animation, because I was clinging to the thing, it didn't activate until I dropped to the ground. So it was just showing the full cube for like 30 seconds while I waited. So this is the map.
Well, I mean,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, I'm a major Soulsborne fan, and you're not into Soulsborne, but you are into Shovel Knight. So,
yeah.
You know, there's definitely the joy of overcoming a challenge is definitely one.
Oh, there's that in this game.
Yeah, that's true.
This isn't an easy game, to be perfectly honest. You do have to get used to the mechanics, and you have to do some weird workouts with your brain. But it definitely rewards thoughtful play.
What's funny about the platformer genre is it's one of those genres where being hard is more the rule than the exception.
Yes, definitely.
I mean...
Well, because easy platforming doesn't sound very interesting, does it?
No.
I mean, like, that would just be jumping around. You have to have challenge in a platformer. It's not like combat, where there's lots of ways to make combat interesting. But platforming's mostly the same kind of thing, so you need challenge, I think.
Yeah.
Also, platforming's an older genre, and so it's more targeted towards gamers who've been gaming for a long time. Kids used to play a lot of platformers, but these days I think platformers are more popular among adults.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say that it occurs to me one reason I think I'm falling out with one reason I think cover-based shooting as a mechanic tends to get old fairly quickly is because it's hard to make it challenging without making it really frustrating.
Yeah, I can see that.
I mean, you can play something like Gears of War on high difficulty, and it's not friggin' easy, but it's not, like, a satisfying challenge either.
Yeah. Anyway, this has just been the prologue of Fez. We're going to head out into the broader world in a minute, and we are going to see this world really unfold. But that's for another episode. I hope you've all enjoyed this. This is certainly a very interesting game, and I hope you'll come with me to see the rest of it. But for now, good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.